My summers were spent at my grandmother's house. It was a small, quiet place, far from the city's noise. The best part of her house was not the house itself, but the garden behind it. Grandma's garden was a world of its own, a place of magic and life. It was filled with tall yam vines that climbed towards the sun and leafy cocoyam plants that hid the rich, dark earth. Sweet-smelling herbs grew in patches, their scents mixing with the damp soil after the morning rain. I loved spending my days there, watching the lizards dart between the rows of vegetables and listening to the hum of the bees. It was a peaceful place, predictable and safe. My grandmother knew every leaf and every root in her garden. She tended to it with a deep love that I could feel in the air. Among all the familiar greens and browns, there was one plant that stood apart. It was a single, strange-looking tree at the very back of the garden, almost hidden by an overgrown mango tree. This tree was different. Its leaves were a dark, almost black color, and they had veins that looked like silver threads. The branches twisted in unusual ways, as if they were reaching for something no one else could see. But the most amazing thing about this tree was the fruit it bore. It grew only one fruit at a time, a single, perfect sphere that hung from the lowest branch. The fruit was the color of deep, polished blood, a vibrant crimson that seemed to glow with its own inner light. It looked like a jewel someone had carefully placed there. I was always drawn to that corner of the garden. While my friends played with old tires and sticks, my eyes would wander to the crimson fruit. It seemed to call to me, a silent invitation that I could not ignore. I would find excuses to walk near it, pretending to chase a butterfly or look for a fallen mango. The closer I got, the more I felt its strange energy. The air around the tree was always cooler, and the usual garden sounds seemed to fade away into a respectful silence. I asked my grandmother about it once, but she just shook her head and told me to stay away from that tree. Her face was serious, and there was a look in her eyes I had never seen before, a mix of respect and fear. That only made me more curious. My days became a cycle of watching and wondering. I watched my grandmother in her garden. She would water the yams and weed the peppers, her movements slow and practiced. She never went near the strange tree. It was as if she had an invisible line drawn in the soil that she would not cross. But I could see her looking at it sometimes, her lips moving in a silent prayer or a quiet chant. The fruit just hung there, perfect and untouched, its red skin so smooth and inviting. I imagined what it would feel like in my hand, what it would taste like. Would it be sweet like a mango or sour like a lime? The mystery of it was a constant presence in my mind, a puzzle I desperately wanted to solve. My grandmother's warnings were never direct. They were like stories, spoken in a low voice in the evenings as we sat on the veranda. She would talk about the land and its secrets. She said that some things were not for us to understand, that they belonged to the spirits of the earth. The world is older than we are, she would say, her eyes looking far away into the darkness. It has its own rules, its own balance. To disturb it is to invite chaos. I would listen, nodding my head, but in my heart, I thought they were just old tales. I was young and did not believe in the things I could not see. Her stories were interesting, but they felt like fiction, not a real warning about the fruit in her garden. One evening, a storm was coming. The sky was dark gray, and the wind was picking up, making the palm trees sway. My grandmother went into the garden. I watched her from the window. She did not go to bring in her tools or cover her plants. Instead, she walked towards the strange tree. She carried a small wooden bowl with white chalk powder in it. She stood before the tree, just outside the invisible line she never crossed. She began to chant, her voice low and rhythmic, mixing with the sound of the wind. She dipped her fingers into the chalk and drew symbols on the ground, forming a circle around the tree. It was a ritual, a ceremony of protection. I had never seen her do anything like this before. It was not like her usual gardening. This was something different, something ancient and serious. Her face was stern, focused on her task. She was not just protecting a plant, she was containing something. She was speaking to the tree, to the fruit, asking it for peace, or maybe warning it to stay calm. The sight sent a small shiver down my spine. This was more than just a strange fruit. It held a power that my grandmother respected and feared. I started to feel a small bit of fear myself, but it was mixed with an even stronger dose of curiosity. What was she so afraid of? What was she protecting us from? After the ritual, she came back inside, her face tired. She looked at me and said, "Some things hold memories. They hold the past. They are not meant for the hands of children." Her words were heavy, and for the first time I felt like she was speaking directly to me about the fruit. It was a clear warning, but her actions had only deepened the mystery for me. The fruit was not just a fruit. It was a container of memories, a piece of the past. My young mind could not grasp the full meaning of her words. All I knew was that the red sphere hanging in the garden held a secret, and I was more determined than ever to discover what it was. The fear was there, but the pull of the unknown was stronger. The next day, the sun was bright, and the garden was calm again after the storm. My grandmother went to the market. She told me to stay inside and finish my chores, but I could not focus. The image of the crimson fruit was burned into my mind. I could hear its silent call, louder than ever before. My heart was beating fast. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was disobeying my grandmother, but the urge was too strong to resist. I walked to the back door and looked out into the garden. The fruit was there, glistening in the sunlight. It seemed to shine even brighter today, as if the storm had washed it clean and made it new. Responsibility felt like a distant word. I stepped out into the garden. My feet felt heavy as I walked towards the back. The air grew cooler as I approached the strange tree. I could smell a faint scent now, something sweet and earthy, like honey and damp soil mixed together. I stood before the tree, right where my grandmother had performed her ritual. I could still see the faint white lines of the chalk on the ground. My hand was shaking as I reached out. I hesitated for a moment, my grandmother's serious face flashing in my mind. But the beauty of the fruit was overwhelming. It was so perfect, so red, so real, I had to know. My fingers touched its skin. It was smooth and cool like a polished stone. It felt alive. As soon as I touched it, a strange feeling washed over me. It was like a little electric shock, a buzz of energy that ran up my arm. I wrapped my fingers around it and gently twisted. It came off the branch easily, fitting perfectly in the palm of my hand. It was heavier than I expected. I stood there for a long time, just holding it, feeling its weight and its strange energy. The fear was gone now, replaced by a thrilling sense of discovery. I had the secret in my hand. The mystery was mine to solve. I felt powerful. Without thinking too much, I brought the fruit to my lips. I couldn't stop myself. I took a small bite. The taste was indescribable. It was not sweet or sour. It was like tasting a memory, like tasting a feeling. It tasted like sunshine after a long rain, like the quiet of the deep forest, and like the sound of a distant drum. It was confusing and overwhelming all at once. For a moment, nothing happened. I stood there, the strange taste filling my mouth, feeling a little disappointed. I thought, maybe it was just a fruit after all. But then, the world around me began to change, and I knew I had made a terrible mistake. The garden was no longer a peaceful place. The moment the fruit's juice touched my tongue, the world fractured. It was not a violent change, but a subtle shift in reality. The colors of the garden became intensely bright, almost painful to look at. The green of the leaves was a blinding emerald, and the brown of the soil was a deep, throbbing earth tone. But that was not the strangest part. I started to see things. Faint, ghostly images flickered at the edge of my vision. I saw figures walking through the garden, people from another time. I saw a young woman who looked like my grandmother planting a seed where the strange tree now stood. I saw children playing games I did not recognize. They were like echoes, transparent and silent, living in a world layered on top of mine. The sounds changed too. The quiet hum of the garden was replaced by a chorus of whispers. The voices came from the trees, from the soil, from the air itself. They were speaking in a language I did not know, but I could feel their emotions. I felt their joy, their sorrow, their anger, and their fear. It was too much. The garden, my place of peace, had become a place of noise and chaos. I dropped the half-eaten fruit and covered my ears, but the whispers were inside my head. I ran back into the house, my heart pounding with a new kind of fear. This was not the thrill of curiosity. This was real, terrifying, and I could not make it stop. When my grandmother returned, she knew immediately. She did not even have to ask. She just looked at my wide, frightened eyes. She saw how I flinched at sounds no one else could hear and stared at empty spaces where I saw flickering figures. Her face was not angry. It was filled with a deep sadness and pity. She sighed, a long, heavy sound. "You ate the fruit," she said softly. It was not a question. That is the tree of memories. It does not show you the future. It shows you everything that has ever happened on this land. Now, you will see it too. You will carry the burden of its past. Her words confirmed my terror. This was not a dream. It was my new reality. My life changed forever on that day. The visions and whispers never completely went away. I learned to live with them, to separate the past from the present. My grandmother taught me rituals to quiet the noise, to ground myself in my own time. I now share the responsibility of the garden with her. I help her draw the chalk circles and say the quiet chants. I understand now that her warnings were not meant to control me, but to protect me. I learned that curiosity without wisdom is dangerous. Some doors are closed for a reason, and some secrets are meant to be kept. I had to learn this lesson the hard way, and now I carry the memories of the land with me, a constant reminder of the day I tasted the mysterious fruit.